Hi everyone, I'm Maria and welcome to Making Zen Online Retreat for 2022. You're at an online retreat for stitches with a holistic approach to creativity. And thank you so much for having a look at my presentation on coffee bean sacks. Welcome to returning and new viewers of the Making Zen Online Retreat. If you don't know me, my name is Maria. You can find me at Velosos or at So Organized Style Podcast. I sell all the things and I produce So Organized Style Podcast. And it's a community-based podcast. It's been going since 2019. And I provide 2 episodes a week for the Sober 50 community. And that community is led by Judith Staley, Sandy Back, and their blog writer, Susan Young. Today, I'll provide you with as much information as I can about how to use coffee bean sacks to help you think about how you can reuse this resource that's available in all countries. When I started experimenting with coffee bean sacks last year, I learned a lot from this experience. Now, this is a slow project, so if you intend on embarking on using coffee bean sacks, give yourself all the time you can to get a good result and also enjoy the journey. Now, my research started with Googling, of course, and also looking at hashtags on Instagram. And that's where I learnt that people use the term burlap and hessian when it comes to coffee bean sacks. And there was also a lot of examples where people were reusing potato hessian sacks online. Now, when I walk through produce markets, it's a lot more interesting because now I look at how they store their bulk produce. So what I'm going to take you through is the backstory as to why I started using coffee bean sacks, how to deal with hessian and burlap, preparing it, getting ready to sew with it, and some sewing ideas. Now, I've got a brother who is a barista at home. He has the whole box and dice at home with his coffee making, and he's really proud of his coffee setup. Now, his birthday was approaching, and I thought, why not make him a flat cap and barbecue accessories using coffee bean sacks. Now, I found a local seller and I bought 5 coffee bean sacks before I discussed the project with him. Now, he absolutely loved this project. However, he decided against it because his kids would have called him an old man wearing a flat cap. But we did agree that I could make him some long barbecue mitts and a barbecue apron because he loves barbecuing. And I found a coffee branded print to make those items with, and he loves them. So in the meantime, the coffee bean sacks arrived at my door. So now I had to figure out what was I going to use them for. So when I did my research, coffee bean sacks are they're known as burlap or hessian, and another term that is used are gunny sacks. Now, coffee bean sacks are made of jute fibers, so the threads that are used in the weave are jute fibers. And they're treated with mineral oil and they're woven to size depending on what the sacks are going to be used for. And in my case, they're coffee bean sacks. Further in the research that I did, I found out that gunny sacks are the most affordable and cost-effective storage options for a wide range of agricultural products. So they package not only coffee, but tea, grains, cotton, hazelnut, rice, wheat, cocoa, all sorts of spices, but also chemicals and fertilizers and other food and general items. Now, gunny sacks are known to carry big amounts of weight, so between 50 and 100 kilos. And the gunny sacks themselves are woven or made to the customer's specifications. They're made from jute, which is one of the most widely occurring natural fibers. So not only are they cost effective, but they're also environmentally friendly. The bags have high tensile strength, which makes them withstand wear and tear, even if piled one on top of the other. And gunny sacks are used for many uses, and they've been used for many years. And since the material is non-toxic and is highly breathable, it allows packaged grains and other agricultural commodities like coffee to stay good for many days. So all of these properties mean that coffee sacks made from jute are safe to recycle for use in the home, including making clothing. As a fabric, I treated this like cotton with lots of steaming to give the jute a great finish. The coffee sack fabric is heavy and it crushes very easily, and it's got a similar drape to firm suiting. When you buy Hessian or burlap fabric from fabric retailers, they'll have lots of different types that you can easily work with. So, getting ready to use these pre-loved coffee bean sacks, there are a few ways to go about cleaning them using the sunshine. So, the odors can be removed from the fabric by leaving them in the sun because it'll reduce the smell and it'll also bleach out any minor discoloration. So, don't leave the burlap out in wet conditions. I avoided working with the coffee bean sacks during humid summer days because I just couldn't stand the humidity and the bags against my skin. If you leave the bags out over 2 or 3 days at a time in the sun and it doesn't remove enough of the odor, sprinkle baking soda over the burlap and leave the powder in place for at least a day to absorb the smell. Now, what I've done in the past is I've sprinkled the baking soda onto the sack and then ironed it into the fabric to get the baking soda into the fabric further. So washing burlap is tricky because it actually sheds a lot of fiber and it's a loose material. So hand washing is the ideal way of cleaning the coffee sack. So you only need to put in a small amount of vinegar into room temperature water. But remember that if you're using a laundry tub or the bathtub, that you use a lint trap over the drain so that the fibers that come out of the wash are picked up and don't go down the drain. I chose machine washing. And what happens is that the jute fibers actually do matte and you lose about 30% of the print. So if you make that choice, also remember to clean your washing machine. Most burlap does tend to come apart in the wash. The lint could damage your machine, so be wary of that and don't put cut pieces into the washing machine. Put the full bag in there. Then you would just dry the burlap by hanging it onto a fence or the rack. Whichever way you clean the fabric, the sack, there will be a need to do some repairs. So you can actually use the jute thread that is used to sew the seams together on the bag. You can use those threads also to reweave into the sack itself. Either do this as an invisible mend or as a visible mend. It's all up to you. So repairs are another part of the process to make this resource usable. And in the end, jute can be used in compost. The biodegradability of jute helps with not just organic composting of food and plant waste, but the jute fibers themselves are broken down into rich nutrients over a period of time, leaving zero waste residue. Hence, jute is highly compostable. Now, this is the result of my machine washing the bags. So once the fabric was clean, I was able to unravel the seams and use those threads, reuse the thread. So they were washed anyway, so that was really great. The stitching thread that is used to sew together the sack are a thicker thread than the threads that are used in the fabric, but they're really great to keep on hand for repairs, which is what I had to do. And I chose to reweave on this occasion because I really liked the print and I wanted to have the raw green coffee bean print on whatever the project was going to be. And as you can see, they've actually used green and yellow thread in this coffee bean sack. So that was pretty handy and I liked that. So I wanted to keep that. And this is the result of my reweaving on this particular bag. And as you can see at the top of the bag, they've got pink thread at the top. So look, the reweaving was nothing flash, but it made it, it plugged a hole and it is visible. And this is what it looks like when, this is the result of colouring in the print that washed out a bit when I put the bag into the washing machine. It took a little bit of time to do, but it was fun doing the colouring in with the permanent marker. You might think that this is a lot of work to go ahead and do something with Hessian. And if you really want to skip all of this, then the easiest thing is to go to the hardware store and get the Hessian already from the rolls that they have if you don't have a fabric retailer nearby. Sewing preparation. These are some of the things that I think you need to just be aware of. And if you don't have the tools that I have in my stash, don't worry. Large paper scissors, if you don't have a rotary cutter, will do just fine in cutting the hessian. Long pins, use the sort of universal heavy duty sewing machine needles, have some marking pens, some permanent marking pens, and any sort of top stitching thread. So the sort of needles that you would need for your sewing machine would be 60 to 80 to 100 or more, and they would be universal needles or sharps. So when sewing with hessian, use an all-purpose cotton or a polyester or even a polycotton blend thread. And as hessian is made up of a lot of loose fibers, clean your machine, your sewing machine as you go. This prevents a pile of lint building up in the bobbin and also all around. It's really helpful to have a lint roller or a vacuum around you. Otherwise, things can get really messy in your sewing room. Anyone who's worked with hessian before knows that it does tend to move around a lot. And that's why having a test project is a good thing. The other thing to be aware of is burlap does fray a lot. So add some more to your seam allowance. So if you've got a 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, increase that to an inch. Don't cut yourself short. So here are some of the notions that I had in my stash that I used. And the other thing is, I also want to point out that in the background there, the green print was washed out, but I did a bit of colouring in on that. So you'll see that at the top of that image, there is the thread that I took off when I unraveled the seams of the bag. I've got large scissors, my paper scissors. I've got a rotary cutter. I've got zippers with large teeth, contrasting colors. And at the bottom, I've got a dark gray cotton fabric that I'm going to use to interline my next project. And as you can see, the bag on the right, the Excelso Coffee of Colombia, that's a 60 kilo bag. So they're quite big and they're woven to the needs of the grower. So here's a close-up look of the logo that I colored in and the threads that I've saved from unpicking the bag. Now, some sewing ideas. These are a couple of test items that I sewed before I sewed my final garment. So as you can see, on the left is a shopping bag and on the right is like a handbag, which has got some zippers, etc. So I did a bit of print placement on the front of both of these bags and I used a contrasting black cotton fabric, medium weight, because the print on these bags was black. If you look at the bag on the left, there is pink thread at the top of the front of the bag. And I wanted to keep that. And so that's what I did. So I'm really pleased with that. So on the inside of these test pieces, so the bag on the right is the big shopping bag, and I've used a pre-quilted fabric that would give some strength to the bag because it's basically a grocery shopping bag that I put over my shoulder. And it works really well, but I think next time I would add some large magnetic snaps to close the bag. And I'd also put in maybe another pocket on the inside. So it works really well. And I'm really pleased with what I got. And it was a really good test. The one on the left is more of a handbag. And the style that I chose is one that had piping so I could place the Cafe de Brazil logo at the front, and it's got a bit of piping, and on the inside I wanted to make it a little bit pretty, so I've used some rose print cotton fabric and I've put in an internal bag with a contrasting zipper so I could see it more than anything else. And the zipper that I've got for the whole bag is purple because that's what I had in my stash. So then it was time to make the jacket. And the key thing with this jacket is that it's got raglan sleeves, so I could play with placing the print so that you could read what this jacket was all about. And I wanted the logo on the front. So that meant that I chose to use zipper closures for the front of the jacket and also for the pocket, so it wouldn't detract too much from the print. On the inside, which is what I'm showing you, I've interlined the coffee sack fabric with a cotton fabric, medium weight, and that was really good because it's really comfortable to wear. All of the edges are bound with a cotton bias that I've cut out from a cotton that I'll show you in a minute. And then I've also used black fabric for the facings because I wanted to have something that was a good contrast, but that wasn't the coffee sack fabric because I thought that would probably be too scratchy. And lastly, the size of that pocket was designed by me so that I could put my iPhone in it. That was a choice that I made because that's what I wanted. That's part of the fun when you make your own clothes. This is the bias binding that I cut from this coffee print. So it's a quilt cotton. And I thought that I wasn't going to use it, but it was so great for this jacket. And I've still got more of that bias binding that I can use for another day. I've used 2 different bags for this jacket. The sleeve, which is sort of the left, the weave is more open. And so I chose that for the sleeve because you've got movement with your arm. The front and the back of the jacket, there's a lot less movement. So I used the bag that had the sort of tighter weave. Let me show you the back. Now, the back is where I used the, inverted quotes, the ugly part of the print. It's got a pleat, but what I really loved about the ugly side was that it had green thread, like green weave at the bottom. So I used that for the hem. And I didn't mind what was on the back. It's got a pleat. It was going to hide whatever the logo would have been. And so that was my personal choice. So here is the jacket. And this is how it works. It works quite well. I've been wearing it recently because it started to get cool around Sydney with a t-shirt, short sleeves. And because the jacket is lined with cotton, it's fine. It works really well. I'm quite pleased with it. I'm not sure what my neighbors think of me wearing this, but I don't dress for them. I dress for me. And I'm really pleased with it. So I'm hoping that this gives you some encouragement to have a go at using coffee bean sacks for projects for yourself in the future. So lastly, when you're thinking about design ideas for yourself, now I've used the fabric for accessories and for outerwear. The shape that I've used has a little bit of structure in it, but not too much. And I've tried to balance the fullness of the jacket to what I could use for me personally because I'm a short person. I'm actually thinking of using the fabric for a special event, but I don't know what yet. And you might be thinking the same thing. So hopefully I've given you some ideas to encourage you to source some coffee bean sacks in your local area and try them for yourself. So thank you for watching this presentation about how you can use coffee bean sacks in future projects. I hope it's given you some ideas about how to use existing resources like coffee bean sacks for future projects. You're going to get so much more information and inspiration from all of the presenters at this year's Making Zen online retreat. And many thanks to Kate Ward for bringing us all together this year and also for allowing me to be a partner with you, Kate. Enjoy, everyone, and thank you.